Somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, a submarine can move through the water without leaving any visible trace on the surface. From space, satellites see only shifting patterns of waves. From the air, surveillance aircraft detect nothing unusual. Yet beneath the surface, a vessel could be carrying one of the most destructive weapons ever created. Inside its hull sits a missile designed to deliver a nuclear warhead. If launched, that missile could travel hundreds or even thousands of kilometers before reaching its target. For much of the 20th century, nuclear weapons were associated with massive missile silos buried deep underground, or strategic bombers capable of crossing continents. Over time, however, military planners began to realize that the ocean offered something those systems could not guarantee: distance, concealment, and unpredictability. A submarine operating far from shore is difficult to track and even harder to destroy. Once submerged, it becomes part of an environment that covers most of the planet. This characteristic eventually transformed submarines into one of the most important platforms for nuclear deterrence. Today, several nuclear powers maintain fleets of submarines capable of launching ballistic missiles. These vessels patrol silently through vast stretches of ocean, often remaining hidden for months at a time. North Korea is now attempting to enter this strategic arena. During the past decade, the country has tested missiles designed for underwater launch, revealed new submarine designs, and expanded its naval infrastructure. Although the true capabilities of these systems remain uncertain, the pattern suggests a clear objective: extending the country's nuclear deterrent beyond land-based weapons. Understanding why this effort matters requires looking at the strategic logic that shaped North Korea's nuclear program in the first place. Since the end of the Korean War in 1953, the Korean peninsula has existed in a state of unresolved conflict. The war concluded with an armistice rather than a formal peace treaty, leaving the two Koreas technically still at war. For the leadership in Pyongyang, this unresolved confrontation has influenced nearly every aspect of national security policy. Military strength became central to the country's political ideology. Over time, nuclear weapons came to be viewed as the ultimate guarantee of regime survival. Possessing nuclear weapons dramatically raises the stakes of any potential conflict. A state that can respond with nuclear force becomes far more difficult to attack or coerce. During the Cold War, North Korea began building the foundations of its nuclear infrastructure with assistance from the Soviet Union. Early facilities were presented as scientific research centers, but intelligence assessments gradually suggested a broader ambition. Through the 1980s and 1990s, negotiations between North Korea and the international community attempted to limit or freeze these activities. Several agreements temporarily slowed the program, but progress continued in different forms. Then, in 2006, the country conducted its first nuclear test. The explosion itself was relatively small compared to modern nuclear weapons, but its significance was enormous. It confirmed that North Korea had successfully produced a nuclear device. Subsequent tests demonstrated increasing sophistication. Analysts observed improvements in explosive yield and design efficiency. By the early 21st century, North Korea had firmly established itself as a nuclear-armed state. Yet possessing nuclear weapons introduces another strategic challenge. A nuclear device has little military value unless it can be delivered to a target. Ballistic missiles became the primary solution. Over the past 2 decades, North Korea has invested heavily in missile development. The country has tested short-range systems capable of striking nearby targets, medium-range missiles designed to reach Japan, and intercontinental ballistic missiles theoretically capable of traveling across the Pacific Ocean. These tests have drawn international attention because they demonstrate steady technological progress. However, missiles launched from fixed locations on land share an inherent weakness. Launch sites can be identified through satellite imagery. Missile bases can be targeted. In the event of a conflict, those locations would likely become priority targets. Military planners have long recognized this vulnerability. If an adversary launches a surprise attack, land-based missile systems might be destroyed before they ever have the chance to launch. Submarines offer a way to reduce that risk. Operating beneath the ocean surface allows them to avoid many forms of detection. Unlike missile silos, they are constantly moving. Their location changes over time, making them far more difficult to track. This mobility provides an important strategic advantage. Even if a country's land-based forces were neutralized, submarines at sea could still retaliate. That possibility plays a central role in nuclear deterrence. Major nuclear powers have relied on this concept for decades. Fleets of missile submarines patrol oceans around the world, forming one of the most stable elements of global nuclear strategy. North Korea's naval forces have historically been far less advanced. The country operates a relatively large number of submarines, but most of them are small coastal vessels designed for short-range missions. Many are based on Soviet-era designs dating back to the mid-20th century. These submarines were originally built for infiltration, reconnaissance, and coastal defense, rather than strategic missile launches. Launching ballistic missiles from a submarine requires a different kind of vessel. The submarine must be large enough to carry missile tubes. It needs specialized launch systems capable of ejecting missiles from underwater. It must also be stable enough to handle the mechanical stresses associated with launching large rockets. For many years, North Korea lacked these capabilities. That situation began to change during the past decade. Several missile tests revealed a new category of weapon: submarine-launched ballistic missiles. These missiles are designed to be fired from underwater platforms. The launch sequence involves multiple stages. First, compressed gas forces the missile out of its launch tube. The weapon rises through the water and breaks the surface. Only after clearing the ocean does its rocket engine ignite, sending the missile along a ballistic trajectory. North Korea's most widely discussed submarine-launched missile belongs to a series known as Pukguksong. Each test of this system has provided valuable information about the country's technological progress. Although many details remain classified or uncertain, the tests suggest gradual improvements in reliability and performance. Missile development alone, however, does not create a functioning sea-based nuclear deterrent. The country must also build submarines capable of carrying and launching those missiles. In recent years, North Korea revealed a submarine that state media identified as a new strategic platform. Photographs released by the government showed a vessel with multiple vertical launch tubes integrated into its structure. Officials described the submarine as capable of carrying nuclear-capable missiles. International analysts examined the images carefully. Some concluded that the submarine appeared to be a modified version of an older diesel-electric design, rather than a completely new construction. The hull structure and external features suggested that existing technology had been adapted, rather than replaced. Even if that assessment is correct, the modification itself represents an important step. Transforming an older submarine into a missile platform demonstrates an ongoing effort to experiment with sea-based launch systems. In parallel with these developments, North Korea has announced plans to build a nuclear-powered submarine. Such a vessel would represent a major technological leap. Most submarines in the North Korean fleet rely on diesel engines combined with battery systems. These submarines can operate quietly underwater for limited periods, but they must eventually surface or use snorkels to recharge their batteries. Those moments increase the risk of detection. A nuclear-powered submarine operates differently. Its onboard reactor generates energy continuously, allowing the vessel to remain submerged for far longer periods. Some nuclear submarines can stay underwater for months without surfacing. This endurance dramatically increases survivability. A submarine that rarely needs to surface becomes much harder to detect or track. Countries such as the United States, Russia, China, the United Kingdom, and France operate nuclear-powered missile submarines as part of their strategic forces. Developing this technology requires enormous engineering expertise and industrial capacity. Whether North Korea possesses the resources to build such a system remains uncertain. Even so, the ambition itself reveals how the country's military strategy is evolving. A credible submarine-based nuclear capability would provide a new level of security for North Korea's deterrent. Missiles hidden at sea would be extremely difficult to eliminate during a conflict. This potential changes how other countries evaluate the region's strategic balance. Nations such as South Korea, Japan, and the United States monitor North Korean military activities closely. Satellite imagery tracks shipyards and naval bases. Maritime patrol aircraft survey surrounding waters. Underwater sensors listen for submarine movement. Despite these surveillance efforts, the ocean remains an environment where uncertainty persists. Tracking submarines across vast stretches of water is an exceptionally difficult task. Even highly advanced navies cannot maintain constant visibility over every submarine at sea. That uncertainty can influence strategic calculations. If a submarine armed with nuclear missiles might be somewhere in the ocean, military planners must assume it exists, even if they cannot find it. North Korea's continued investment in naval missile systems suggests that its leadership understands this dynamic. International sanctions have attempted to limit the country's access to technology and resources related to nuclear weapons development. These restrictions have slowed certain projects, but have not halted the overall program. From the perspective of the North Korean government, nuclear weapons remain central to national security. They serve both military and political purposes. Militarily, they create the possibility of retaliation against any major attack. Politically, they elevate the country's strategic importance on the global stage. Extending that capability to the ocean would reinforce both objectives. Sea-based missiles add another layer of complexity to regional security. Unlike land-based weapons, which are confined to specific locations, submarines operate across wide areas. Their movements are difficult to predict, and their launch positions may change constantly. These characteristics complicate defensive planning. Missile defense systems rely heavily on early detection and trajectory analysis. When launch points become less predictable, response times shrink. For countries located near the Korean Peninsula, this possibility has prompted increased attention to anti-submarine warfare capabilities. Naval patrols, sonar networks, and surveillance technologies all play roles in tracking underwater activity. Still, the ocean scale ensures that complete coverage remains impossible. The future of North Korea's submarine program remains uncertain. Technological challenges, economic constraints, and international pressure all influence how quickly the country can develop new systems. Yet the trajectory of development points toward a consistent objective: expanding the country's nuclear deterrent into the maritime domain. The world's oceans already host some of the most powerful weapons ever built. Hidden beneath their surface are fleets of submarines carrying missiles capable of devastating entire cities. North Korea appears determined to add its own vessels to that environment. If those efforts succeed, a portion of the country's nuclear arsenal will no longer be confined to land. It will move through one of the most difficult environments on Earth to monitor or control, deep beneath the surface of the ocean.